I'm James Eade at the Eade Foundation. And the Eade Foundation is dedicated to building communities through chess. We support chess literacy and chess excellence. There's a variety of ways we do that. But a little bit about me first. I is basically a chess player, but started playing chess in 1972, but no bonus points for guessing why. And I got good enough to fight with grandmasters, but my experience was that they were just a little bit too strong. So I turned my attention to other things, reading and writing, and writing articles and books about chess. And now I'm doing this little show because it's the age of video, the age of digital content. And so I'm starting this program, and the title is the Chess Files. The answers are out there. And what's the question of the day? The question is who's written a new book? And the answer is Grandmaster Joel Benjamin and Harold Scott.
Hello.
And so what's this book that you guys have written?
Oh, well, it's called Winning the World Open.
Winning the World Open. Is this the cover of it?
It actually is, yeah.
Oh, so it's published by New in Chess, huh? New in Chess they produce really good products. So is yours a really good product?
But by the way, in the introduction, I really love the picture of Sumo Yermo, by the way. That's classic.
I like fighting with grandmasters too.
Well, the Yermo one, I have to give credit to my producer. He's in my ear right now. And next year, 2022, we're going to try to be kinder to each other, but it's not 2022 yet. So he's going to be talking in my ear. And but winning the World Open. Let me start with the basics. Like, why is winning the World Open important?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, this year coming up, 2022, will be the 50th edition of the World Open. And it is the brainchild of Bill Goichberg of Continental Chess Association. And it is the granddaddy of American Swiss system tournaments with the largest consistent prize funds. And it attracts all the top players that, through over the years, they want to come there and win a slice of the pie there. So it's a strong tournament, and it leads to some interesting stories, as you'll find out in the book as well, because it's such a fabled tournament. So here also we have my co-author Joel Benjamin, who has won the event more times than anybody else. Six.
What?
We call him 6-time.
Yes, in fact, I mentioned that in the introduction, that I may jokingly insist that everyone refer to me as 6-time World Open champion Joel Benjamin.
Isn't that a rip-off of Walter Brown, though?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Walter, of course. Walter is a guy I would have loved to interview for the book. Unfortunately, he met a demise way too soon. Yeah. So that was a great shame. Because, and of course, he's very much featured in this book. But Harold touched on Bill Goichberg. Bill basically ran all the chess in the Northeast, back in the day when I started playing in 1972, for the same reason, I guess, Jim did, what was going on at the time. And, I played my first tournaments were Goichberg events, and I am a chess player only because of Bill Goichberg. I never would have known anything about organized chess. And I cut my eye teeth in his tournaments, like so many other players. And then he expanded and developed the World Open into a Leviathan, just a huge event with over 1,000 entrants in many sections. And it became the gold standard for American Open tournaments. I mean, there are many important ones, but the World Open was the biggest one with the biggest prize fund, and attracted, great players from all over the world and all over the country, of course. And
so it literally was the World Open, because everybody.
It really was. It really was much more so than the World Series. It could be
right,
literally
which is
called the World
a
Open.
little tiny bit, yeah.
Yeah. It was such a great tournament. And, all the people that we interviewed for the book, all the grandmasters, you can tell in the conversation that the World Open was an important event for them, for probably for more for some than for others. But like Yermo, for instance, who basically won everything in the 90s. He was totally dominant in that decade. And I think for him, it was one way of proving himself, Sumo Yermo. The 910
He
to
was the
Sumo.
Yerminator, we called him.
By the way, I once played on a team called 910 to Yermo, as a takeoff of the 910 to Yuma.
Yeah.
Anyway. It was just...
Was that a Russell Crowe movie?
A very important and meaningful tournament for grandmasters and for average players, for club players out there. I loved that opportunity to play there as well.
Yeah. And Bill Goichberg, we both mentioned, and he was inducted into the U.S. Chess Hall of Fame.
I worked very hard for that.
Yes. Yeah, I was on the trust when we voted for him, and it was my pleasure to do so. He certainly earned it. I think that the difference is between chess players, which originally it was the Hall of Fame for chess players, and Bill got in it for a different reason. And you guys are talking about why he ran so many tournaments that gave people the opportunity to play.
Well, he did a lot of other things that people don't really know about today. He basically started international chess for the masses in America. He ran internationals, he ran futurities, he got dozens of players, FIDE ratings. Many players got their titles because of Goichberg. I got title norms in Goichberg tournaments, also in Eric Schiller tournaments as well. Shout out to Eric, unfortunately passed way too early. So Bill was a leader in promoting junior chess. Hey, anybody who's ever gone to or sent someone to the National Scholastics, Bill invented those. He used to give out cash money prizes. I made a lot of money from those tournaments. USCF took it over and started giving out giant trophies instead.
Yeah.
But Goichberg started all that stuff. So
I remember Grandmaster Walter Brown. I was over at his house. And I started to admire all his trophies, and he said I would give every one of them for $50.
He could probably have gotten a better deal than that.
Yeah, I think so. I would have given him more than that. But so would you call me like the West Coast Bill Goichberg or the West Coast Eric Schiller?
Don't flatter yourself, Jim. No, you are doing a lot of good things, yeah. But the bill was really historic. I mean, some people just have no idea because a lot of this stuff happened a long time ago. But he just did.
But Joel, if I don't flatter myself, who will?
I'll flatter you a little bit.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you.
Jim,
that's why you're here.
You're doing great things with your EAD Foundation, and I want to thank you because last year, or this year still, earlier in the year, I ran an online lecture series with 10 world-class trainers. Joel was included amongst them. We also had Adrian Michelcheson. We had Callie Smith, former world champion. We had Guy Kansky, Larry Christensen, et cetera, et cetera. And you sponsored a group of students from the Berkeley Chess School. So thank you for making that a very successful online lecture series. And you were a large part of its success. So thank you.
Yeah, I try to help domestically, but this is what we've been able to do worldwide. We've been starting international programs beyond the United States because we think that chess has no borders. And also, Joel, you and I go back a ways. You have to agree, I think. Here's a picture of Joel and I, and this is at the Karen's Cup, or what did they call it? It's the Karen's Cup, yes, Karen's Cup, and that was in St. Louis, Missouri, and that's the mecca of U.S. chess now. But
Yeah, well, I mean, Jim and I were there just before all hell broke loose in the world,
yes,
and nobody could hang out together anymore.
that's right. Yeah, that was pre-pandemic, I guess we call it now.
February 2020.
Yeah, yeah. And little did we know that we would be sheltering in place for going on 2 years,
Yeah.
and all the consequences of that, which has given people a chance to buy chess books and to, uh, you know, they might want to be able to read them too. Now, I didn't quite stop buying, but I stopped reading. So this book I want you not only to buy, but to read. And tell us a little bit more. So the World Open is a big tournament, and winning it, six timer, is a major accomplishment. You get a big cash prize, but it's really, is there also the idea that you played the best and you won?
Well, for me, being either the outright winner or among the people in the top group was huge. And looking back on it, it was really beyond the money. I mean, I lamented the loss of the money when I didn't get it, but I never had financial problems, unlike some of my colleagues talked
Sure.
about in the book. But for me, it was just like I just wanted to succeed in that tournament because it was just so meaningful. But anyway, about the book, there's so many avenues that you can attack such a topic from, and I think the tournament just as a historical document stands on its own. But we thought about it as really the greatest challenge out there for tournament players, and so we kind of went for that angle. We interviewed a number of I don't know how many, 15, 6, 18, I don't know how many.
15, 16, somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Almost as many as the world champions in my world champion book. And so we interviewed all.
I don't have a picture of that one, but I do own it. There you go. Okay.
Because that one I physically have a copy of. So we interviewed all these players to get their story, find out their experience, and what they did to prepare for the tournament, what they did during the tournament, how they approached certain games, how they made decisions about whether to how hard to go for the win, whether to take a draw, play it safe. And so we interviewed all these.
Element is so key, and I think it's unappreciated by so many people because you've got to decide whether to go for it, and then you incur some risk.
Well, I'm actually very candid about the fact that I was not good at that, because looking back on all the times I played, I could have won this tournament 10 or 12 times, if I hadn't messed up a lot of situations. Although that's probably true for all these guys. There are so many guys. Like I think about Smirin, like how long he took to win a World Open, and then he won, I think, 4 or 5. But he could have won them in almost every decade. He was so good in that tournament.
Yeah.
But anyway, these guys that we interviewed, we called them heroes of the World Open, and all these guys. Almost all of them were multiple winners, 2 or 3 or more times, and one hero that only won once, who was Gregory Kaidanov, but he won with 8 out of 9, with 8 wins, which nobody ever did anything like that. So we really wanted to get his story. So these heroes really helped us tell the story of how you go about making your way through incredibly tough, challenging event.
Yeah, and Kadainov came right after Yermo, and he didn't quite do the sweep like Yermo did, but he was just about as good. He seemed to win everything he entered for a while.
Yeah, and then he kind of tailed off from entering entering open tournaments. And he became such a successful chess teacher. He was doing that most of his time. So that's the thing. Everybody had their own story. What they were doing, and there were guys that would be back there at the World Open pretty much every year, which was, pretty much me until the 2000s. And that's another thing we get into. Life changes, players getting married. It's not good for winning the World Open.
No.
Players having kids, definitely not good for winning the World Open. Players moving, like Yermo moved when he was in New Jersey in the Midwest, where his prime World Open years, and he got married, moved out to your neck of the woods, and then he was pretty much done.
That's not true. He moved to South Dakota afterwards, and that's
he ultimately did that. Yeah, maybe
but
more. Speed.
He was in New Jersey and Cleveland, and that's close enough to drive to anything. Pretty much. But I'm fascinated to read more about it. And Harold, if I wanted to buy it, how would I buy it?
Well, right now it's available on New and Chess, their website, newandchess.com. And more locally in the States, I know chessforless.com. They have it. They have a bunch of copies in stock right now.
Is that Malcolm Payne?
Well, he's associated. That's Greg Yanez. He's located in Florida, but he's associated with the London Chess Center there. So he gets all the books from Europe that are shipped to Europe can get easily shipped to him. So he got first dibs on the products coming from Europe. Yeah.
Excellent. So those are Chess for Less and New in Chess.
Yeah.
If you want to buy the book today, but what about later in the year, new year?
On Amazon, it says on their site that they're shipping on January 15th.
Oh,
yeah, and you can pre-order the book.
Yeah.
You may be able to pre-order the book from your favorite bookseller, but it's just that it will become generally available in the U.S. The books will be at the U.S. Site for books, and they'll be shipping them out to all the American retailers. So, as January goes on, the book will be available from your, whoever you like to buy books from. I'm sure you'll be able to find it at Barnes and Nobles and other booksellers.
Great.
By the end of January.
Shouldn't it have first come to Philadelphia though? No,
well, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna, I'm putting in my calendar that I'm going to be at the World Open next year, and I will confess that I've taken a long vacation from the World Open because it's no country for old men.
Yes.
It's very tough. It's very tough on guys like me. I played in 2009. I played in 2012. I actually tied for first in 2006, which is one of my best years. But that was before I had kids. And it's tough. But I want to be there next year to sell a lot of books, obviously. But also 50th year is just so
that's
awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, maybe I'll put that on my calendar. Thanks, Harold, for mentioning that because I didn't know it was the 50th. And
I played in the second World Open.
Yeah. Wasn't it in New York then, though?
It started in New York.
Yeah.
1973 was the first World Open. And like I said, I played in 74 in the booster section, which was under 1,800. Back then, there were just two sections. And in 76, when we had the bicentennial, remember that? I graduated to the open section. And then the tournament moved to Philadelphia. It started gravitating to Philadelphia. Had trouble finding a permanent foothold. It was in New Paltz, New York in 81, which was my first victorious year. And it was in Valley Forge. It was, it had been in Center City, Philadelphia. And then eventually the Adams Mark, and anybody who's played in Old Opens has memories of the Adams Mark. It was, quite an infamous location, and that's where it was for many, many years.
Many years.
Yeah.
That's what I still, when I think of it, I think of that. But I did play in the World Open in New York, and I was also a class player. I can't remember the year exactly, but it must have been like 75, 76, something like that. I was a class A player. And I remember that I had a chance to win the class A section, but the opponent that I had, and this taught me a life lesson too, came to the board with a messy sandwich, or we call them grinders, like these
Heroes in my neck of the woods.
Yeah,
heroes. Okay, and
you're revealing your New England roots.
yes,
I believe you can call it a hoagie too, right?
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Although I don't know anyone who calls it that, but I think I've heard it. So,
Or
anyways,
subs.
it was
Most of the country called them subs.
subs. That's it. Yes. Sorry, grinder is definitely New England. But the tomato sauce was all over his fingers, and then he adjusted my pieces.
Ew!
And I was so pissed that I lost the game just because I was so mad at him. And I didn't think, call the tournament director or anything like that. I was too young, too inexperienced. And then I learned that, your opponent might try to unsettle you. And so
we have some stories like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to keep your cool. If you want to.
Well, particularly in our book, there's a story about Alex Golden when he was playing Edward Gufeld.
Notorious.
And Gufeld has a reputation of being kind of an unsavory character. Yes. And obviously Alex Golden was aware of this or whatever, and he was making gestures at the board or doing what he was doing, and Alex took a good approach to it, and he thought of the guy. He wasn't going to be disturbed by what he was doing or anything. He just thought of the guy as being funny.
Clown.
Yeah, a clown.
Yeah.
He had a picture in his head, and he wasn't getting mad over that or anything like that. And we detail that, and I have a little bit more color added to that. But I thought his approach was very good to take.
Yeah, think of them as a clown. Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wish I'd read that story when I was a teenager. So you have stories from all sorts of players about all sorts of situations that they found themselves in the World Open. Like you were saying, like you're in contention. Should I settle for a draw? Should I play for a win? Should I risk losing to play for the win? Those elements come to, and you've won it 6 times, Joel. You must have faced that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because almost every player said, well, I just, I played according to whatever the situation demanded. Just looked around, I got to, play for a win. If there are some people that could score higher than me, or maybe it's going to be a huge tie, I might go for it. But that's not exactly true, because in every year there's always some players that are the first to take the quick draws in the last round. And then as more of them do that, then okay, if you're a remaining player, you can, you can feel safer that you're not gonna get shut out if you make a draw. I was almost always one of the guys to make the draw in the last round, because I just hated the idea of everything coming crashing down. And I experienced that in 1983. I was beating everyone. I beat Lane, Lombardi, Eugene Meyer. I beat all kinds of titled players. And then I probably had a winning position against Quinteros in the 7th round. In the 8th round, I played Leonid Bass, who was a tough opponent for me. I played that game without confidence, and I lost. Another year in 86, I lost to Sarawat in the last round, and I was more afraid of Yasser than I should have been, especially because after that, I actually won a lot of games from him. It's very important to have a good mentality. Really, the only time I went for it in the last round was in 06, when I played against Sandipan Chandra Sandipan. It's always hard to tell what the surname is with
Yes,
Indian
I
players.
understand.
It was very hard to prepare for him on ChessBase because sometimes he had Chandra as the last name and
Yeah.
sometimes Andipan. But anyway, I went for it in that game and I was winning, and I was not able to win. I ended up drawing, and which ultimately tied for first. But I was kind of proud that in my last hurrah, at least I went for it.
Well, who's the grandmaster in this picture, Joel?
That guy's not a grandmaster.
That guy is.
That was Fed. The first guy was John Pedrovich, of course.
Yeah.
And John Fedorovich is one of our heroes.
A five-timer.
He's a five-timer. And he won in the 70s, and he won in the 80s. And did he win 99? I think he won in the 90s too. So he had quite a spread, and he still competes in the World Open, and now he can go for the under 2450 prize, or sometimes he's under 2400. Bill plays with that a little bit. So Fed is a real World Open diehard, but he was one of the first. So he's the second guy in our book after Walter Brown. He's our second hero. And he's a real World Open stalwart.
And he was very interesting in the interview in the fact that he started playing chess in 72, and then 5 years later in 77 he won his first World Open, and he was also playing on the international stage in England in Hastings. Yeah, so he really developed very quickly as a player, and what one
not according to Mark Pinto. Sorry.
But one of my takeaways from him, he really maximized his tournament experience. He walked around back in the old days with a notebook and was taking notes. And when he was out in like Lone Pine and playing in those tournaments, he was asking players like Petrosian, like, what's with this Rook A3 and the Benoni and things of that nature. So he really, I think, is one that we don't always maximize our tournament learning experience. We play our games, we go over our games, but there's other games to look at, questions to ask from strong players. And I think that was part of why he achieved success so quickly in his career. So,
yeah, that's great to learn about him. The reason that we're fighting in these pictures is I'm trying to write a book about him, and he won't let me because I think he's got a lot of.
Well, John
stories.
is pretty much fighting all the time, so
that's true.
No, actually, John should write a book. Now he's written a few books. But everything he credited writing the Benko Gambit book with helping him a lot. Yeah. Because 1989 was the year of the Fed. That was his best year. He tied first in the World Open, but he also ran the gauntlet in the New York Open, which some of our, by the way, some of our Russian-born players that we interviewed referred to that as one of the greatest all-time performances in American chess. Fed winning the New York Open against all these Russian grandmasters. So that was the year of the Fed when he wrote his Benko Gambit book. But he should write a different kind of book. He should write about his experience. I mean, people would want to read that, but just kind of can't pin him down to doing it.
No, and I've asked everybody to help me pressure him into it, but he
responds well to pressure, as you know.
Yeah. So this is I would think, not having read it, but from listening to you talk, it's going to be a major contribution to chess history and chess culture, as well as
we're playing. We put a lot of time and effort into the book, and we want to make sure that not only was it an instructive book, but that it was very entertaining as well, because there's a ton of stories of good and bad behavior in the World Open over the years. We first of all, we start off the book by detailing how Bill Goichberg got involved in running chess tournaments, and from his very first chess tournament right up to the start of the World Open. So there's a really nice history of that. There's actually some Bobby Fischer stories in there of back in the early days, although Fischer never played in a Continental Chess Association event. But there are some interesting stories that I think the reader will enjoy. And then there's this chapter towards the end of the book called "Cheating in Chess," and it seems like the World Open attracted the cheaters because of the rich prize funds. And we have detailed stories about those efforts to game the system. And there's also players who tried to throw games, and we do name some names in that book. So
whoa, I gotta get it for that reason alone.
We didn't hold back. We didn't hold back. So
that's great of you, because people always soft pedal that aspect of it. There's people that deny that it happens, and there's people that know that it's happened but don't talk about it. So good for you guys.
Well, I can say this, that the players that came over in the 90s were a pretty honest bunch, and they actually kind of faced a little bit of a trial, because American players were already aware of so much that had happened before that we kind of had to see, like, can we trust these guys?
I guess that's all right.
Yeah, they turned out to be fine, and they hated the cheaters. Yeah, like that guy's honest dude. They hated the cheaters as much as we did. And also there was the Soviet invasion. When the Soviet Union broke down, then players coming over there came over from there, and they had not yet really adjusted to Western life and the ability to make money, real money, on a regular basis. And they, kind of, went crazy a few times. So there were a few years in the early 90s when foreign players, complicated the tournament a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
There was kind of like two groups. There was the foreign players that were kind of playing as a team. So they called it kind of playing with insurance. If there was a last round game, they decided that a decisive result was better than a draw for money purposes.
But it was even more than that, because they kind of had a consortium, as we called them, and they kind of helped to maneuver somebody through. One thing, that if there was a penultimate round game between two Russian players, and we mean a real capital R, like Russian, rather than the immigrants.
Yeah.
The one, a black would usually win those games, because that player would have white in the last round, most likely. But Goichberg did kind of get hip to this stuff, and started thinking, like, maybe I shouldn't pair Russian players against each other in the last round. And so that was a development that happened as well.
Yeah.
Right. There was also the cash prizes were so significant for the class players too. There were people that would, and we're not talking about the top tournament, but the people dropping their ratings in order to qualify for cash.
Yeah. Sandbagging was definitely a problem in the class sections. Yeah. And so they Bill Goichberg innovated.
He did a lot of work on
that with CCA minimum ratings.
Yeah, he pioneered that.
Yeah, he did.
He noticed that somebody who did well, like in the New York Open in April, and then right after that they would drop their rating back down again, and then try to play in the World Open. He caught, and he was saying, you're going to be in the under 1800. So
we have a lot of those stories, and a lot of them are not very well known, and often there's a fair degree of ineptitude in the cheating in the lower sections, and Harold was able to tease out these stories, doing a lot of good research, a lot of events that I didn't even know about, but yeah, we did we didn't forget the lower sections in terms of these things that went on. And although we don't really have games from the lower sections, although I did put one in the tactics section just for fun. And we kind of had to do that because otherwise the book could be 400 or 500 pages, and we just had to stop somewhere.
Right.
But the book is still written very much with the class players in mind, because as we interview our heroes, we find the lessons that they give us about their approach. A lot of these things can be applied to players in the class sections, how they can go about winning their tournaments. So it's not only an instructional, entertaining book, but it also gives you a little bit of a blueprint for how to play these tournaments, whatever section you're in. I mean, if you want to win.
This sounds like a fabulous book. And I wanted to say that you're also making it clear that winning the World Open has some chess games. And so do you do analysis of the games?
Oh, there's a lot of games. So yeah, a lot of games, a lot of analysis.
Uh-huh.
And I analyzed all those games in the hero section. So we have the various heroes, chapters on all of those guys, and we also have a chronological approach. Harold did a really great job writing those chapters and hitting all the high moments, and I also contributed some small annotations in those sections as well. So there are tons of games. Like I said, there's also tactics section at the end, because that's always fun.
Yeah, it's always
it's chock full of good stuff.
The interview process was a real fun part for Joel and I. Yeah. Well, first of all, a lot of the people that we were interviewing were contemporaries of Joel's, and so he had a lot of memories, and it was a great festival of recalling different things for Joel, an amusing part. But on our different ends, we had work to do, and Joel was very interested in about which game was like a key game, which was your best game, and the circumstances that it was played under. And I was trying to attack it from a different angle. I was trying to find something about their makeup, something about their preparation, something how they approached open tournaments. I was trying to find teachable moments that would be interesting for the player there. And so there's a lot of good and useful information in the chapters on the heroes there.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Okay, guys, we're wrapping it up because time constraints, but I could talk to you for a long time about this book and how you went about, and even the interview process. That's really something that I'm interested in.
I just want to say one thing we haven't touched on.
Sure.
This is the first time I've collaborated on a book since Unorthodox Openings in 1987 with Eric Schiller. And that was mostly because Eric had a computer and could do desktop publishing. That's how long ago it was. And I have to say, in this case, this was Harold's baby. He came up with the idea. I've come up with a lot of good ideas for chess books, but this was his. And he asked me to help him on it, and as I learned more about it, I want to really get involved in this book. And eventually I realized that I really wanted to write this book, but I never would have thought of it on my own. So this is thanks so much to Harold for coming up with such a great idea.
Well, there's a flip side to that, Joel, and the thing is, you're a very established author and a very prominent personality in U.S. chess, and you agreed to take me on as a partner in this project.
Grasshopper.
Which is a little bit of a risk on your start, being that I had no track.
Oh, it's a huge risk.
Yeah, so I was like, every night that I thought about watching TV or writing something in the computer, I said, well, I can't let Joel down.
There you go. We all need motivation.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't. I had to step up because Joel took a nice risk, and we turned out very happy with the product. So I'm forever grateful for Joel.
Well, that's coming across from both of you. It's a great collaboration, and that's what makes something special. And I think, again, I can't say firsthand, I haven't seen it yet, but just listening to you recount it, uh, what we went into making the product and what the product ultimately will become, I think it will reflect that mutual admiration and great collaboration. So, what job well done.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you.
when I get it and don't read it, I'll let you know.
We'll quiz
This
you
one I
on it
will
to make
read.
sure you didn't read it.
You know what? I'll record an audiobook just for you, Jim.
Thank you. And then I'll think I'll have to listen to this. Harold did this, all this.
And until
all
then,
this
we'll just hold your eyes open like Clockwork Orange and make
Orange,
you
right?
read the book.
No, it's a sin. Thank you both for taking the time to come on to the show and to promote your new book, your latest effort, Joel. And is this your first book, Harold?
It is, and I got the bug, and I'm going to work on a 2-volume instructional series, and hopefully I can get that published. But I do want to mention one last thing, that Joel and I are going to be doing a book signing at the U.S. Amateur Team East coming up in February. So that's a fun tournament, as we know, and we're going to do a book signing there, and hopefully we'll see a lot of our friends there. So
and as time goes on, and we have copies of the book, we're gonna promote it at the various book signings
of course
around the country in the near future.
And hopefully you'll be able to do that. We'll all be able to see each other in person again. And,
I'll be at the U.S. Open, so in California.
It feels like I just saw you, Jim. It wasn't that long ago. It was the summertime,
Yeah, it was August.
In Boise.
And I got to spend a lot of time with Harold, and so that was special.
Yeah, and break bread. Yes, it was
nice. And
although it was like this.
I know, and that's what I was thinking. I used to think Delta was something at the end of the Mississippi River, and this, and since I'm of Irish ancestry, I don't know what everyone's afraid of the Omicron, but but hopefully there won't be another variant, and we'll all be able to see each other again.
Indeed,
absolutely,
sooner rather than later. And the Amateur Team East, shout out for that, because that was one of my favorite tournaments to ever play.
Oh yeah,
the World Open.
I direct there, so I'll be directing the tournament. That's a lot of fun for me, and I've directed some of the World Opens too. So I come at it from a little bit different angle than Joel, always being a player. So I'm looking forward to Jersey. It's one of my favorite times each year.
And as we associate the World Open with Bill Goichberg, we associate the Amateur Team East with E. Stephen Doyle.
Absolutely.
Shout out to him. Yeah. And so best of luck to each of you. I'm going to do my exit and take you backstage, but thanks again for joining. Wonderful talking to you. Bye-bye. Okay, it's just me again, but I'm going to say goodbye for the EAT Foundation. And what we're doing around the world is, speaking of the World Open, this is an enterprise to bring chess to places that cannot afford to buy the equipment. And what we do is help those who can't help themselves. And if you help us by going to our website, the URL is scrolling across the bottom of the screen now. You can help us help them. So that's my pitch. And for now, it's time for me to say goodbye, adieu, and to